Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
New details tonight in another big story. Today, the Moscow Police Department is investigating a homicide after 4 people were found dead inside a home near the University of Idaho campus earlier today. The Moscow Police Department says they responded to reports of an unconscious person on King Road around noon today. When they got there, they found 4 people dead inside the home. No word on how those 4 people died, but the case is being investigated as a homicide. Police say they will release more information once next of kin has been notified. And just after 1 o'clock today, the university sent an alert asking students to stay away from the area and to shelter in place. The school has since lifted the shelter in place request and says they don't believe there is an active threat. We'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more.
Regarding the resources that we've put forth in this investigation, the Moscow Police Department has 4 detectives, 24 patrol officers, and 5 support staff dedicated to this investigation. The FBI has 22 investigators in Moscow and 20 additional agents assigned in various locations, as well as 2 members of the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Idaho State Police has 20 investigators, a public information team, a forensic services and crime scene team, and 15 uniformed troopers who have been valuable in helping provide community patrols and safety patrols. We very much appreciate their support. This is our highest priority. It will remain our highest priority. We owe that to the families.
Information whenever possible, but not at the expense of compromising the investigation and prosecution. David, what's your assessment so far? Here we are. Again, we go back to November 13th, a quadruple murder, and we don't have a publicly named person of interest or suspect in the case, and now we've got some friction with the family.
Well, frustration is understandable, of course. I don't blame the police department for withholding certain information. They can't do that without jeopardizing, in many cases, the investigation. I will note this. Earlier today, I was reading a few articles and conversations that the father had with various members of the press, and he mentioned that one investigator on the team was 26 years old. And my first thought was, I know guys who spent 26 years in homicide. So there's a level of experience. If the Moscow Police Department hasn't had a number of homicide investigations, if the state police in Idaho have not had a number of investigations, the FBI forensic murder is not not a federal offense except in very narrow areas. So we don't have trained homicide investigators. So from that standpoint, they may have good forensics, and I don't have any FBI forensics is great, but I think they would profit by having someone who spent a lot of time working a lot of homicide cases, active investigations, and they really need to get their press department. They probably don't have a press department, but their media communication is not that great.
You've got thousands of tips. Information management is a problem in a case like this. You have to make sure that everybody is following up on leads and that you're still continuing with the investigation. There's a lot of forensics. We're talking about defensive wounds. We're talking about an up close and bloody murder scene. So there's a lot of scientific evidence that has to be gathered. But by the same token, what I'm seeing from a media management standpoint, not that this to me does mean something. If you're messing up the media management, are you messing up the investigation? What's striking to me is that we're getting contradictory information, whether or not this is targeted, whether or not the community should be concerned. And we're having the prosecutor speak and we're having police officers speak, which is something that should never happen. It should be one person that's the spokesperson. I get not giving data. Sometimes cases take it 6 months, 8 months, and it's frustrating to the public. But what is the sense out there as to whether or not this investigation is being done properly? And of course, we know there's multiple law enforcement agencies involved.
Well, I think there is a lot of frustration, and we've seen that in some of the comments from Steve Gonsalves, who is Kaylee Gonsalves' father. He said he's been frustrated. I spoke with him briefly by phone yesterday.
Doing matters. And it matters in what we are committed to doing, and that is to, the best way we can think of to honor these victims and their families is to conduct this investigation correctly. Finally, I'd like to share that I've been in regular contact with Idaho's Governor Brad Little throughout this investigation. Governor Little is making available up to $1 million for expenses related to this ongoing investigation.
Here are the latest updates as police try to figure out who killed 4 college students in Idaho last month. 1. Police haven't made an arrest even after 6 weeks, and they say they don't suspect the other 2 roommates who were in the house during the attack. Officials believe that the victims were stabbed in the early morning while they were sleeping, and the 2 other people who were in the house were asleep on a different floor. 2. One of the few leads that police have made public is asking for help in finding the driver of a car that looks like this.
A similar car was recently seen in Eugene, Oregon, but police say it wasn't the one from the crime scene.
3. While the FBI and the state have been looking into this investigation, one of the private lawyers for the family is questioning if officials are in over their heads.
I'm not sure they're capable of handling a quadruple murder.
He said police have done a poor job in communicating with the families. And 4. A lot of evidence and more than 10,000 tips have been collected so far, meaning it could take weeks for police to properly analyze and go through all the new information they have.
So I think there's some misconception out there with how we operate here in Moscow. We've called in ATF in the past. We've called in the FBI in the past on many of these big cases because they have resources that we don't. And we want to have the best investigators there. That's why we call in the state police from the very beginning of these as well. So we've always done those type of investigations with the help of our federal partners as well as our state partners.
And you mentioned calling in the state police at the beginning. One concern that we've heard from the Gonsalves family attorney is he has questioned how the investigation was handled in the first 48 hours. He says perhaps there was more that could have been done immediately after the murders. Do you think things were handled properly right at the beginning? I mean, do you have any regrets about the way things were initially handled?
I do think they were handled properly. We secured the scene quickly. We called in the state police. We did our due diligence in getting the things that we needed to do to, have this be a solid case all the way through. We called in the state lab to collect evidence, and I believe that it was the initial stuff that we started and how we did things that will help bring this to a conclusion.
I'm assuming the first thing that you're doing is researching this guy. And, there's something called the Andrew Garrett discovery. Are you familiar with it?
I sure am. Yeah.
And it sure does seem like you guys were on the same page as far as the possibility of a social media account potentially belonging to Brian Koberger following some of the victims and your daughter and Maddie and Xana. Do you still feel that way, that that's the right profile and that there was some sort of following, at least on the internet, of some sort?
Yeah, it was kind of confusing at the very beginning, and I'm sure it was confusing for the investigators, because I went in there one day with my family, and we were like, what happened to the LinkedIn? Why were you guys into our account? Why did you remove it? And they looked at us like we were from another planet. Eyes bulge, and we could tell they were being completely honest. They were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. Well, we later on figured out and investigated and found out that it was the FBI. So there was 2 parallel investigations going on at the same time. So I think, and I've been told that the FBI wanted clear lines. Like, you guys are going to be working on this stream of information. We're going to be working on this stream of information. And Stalking was one of them. When I had those sit down meetings with those FBI agents, they talked about how it was a 20-year term that they could possibly get if, because I was worried that things, I thought at one particular time, maybe I could have the charges dropped on Kaylee and picked up at the federal level. And then there would be a fail-safe in case something happened at the state level, if any mistakes were made, if anything got thrown out. We were just trying to be that careful. And they basically let me know that they had an investigation that they could still pick up. Even if something got messed up, this person was not going to walk free if, somebody came out and, heaven forbid, got caught lying, or the Brady, or whatever the different things that can throw evidence out. There was still another investigation that they felt very confident in. That I remember one of the agents saying, "We're the FBI. Do you think that a mass murderer of 4 would be released on a technicality?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "No. We've sealed, we've looked, we have evidence. This individual will never be free again. 100%, we have the right guy. There's no doubt in our minds. And we can have him at the state level, we can have him at the federal level." So it built my confidence into sticking with the state level and not. It would have been more expensive. And I literally was at the point where I was like, if it means that we don't ever... Kaylee doesn't ever go to court for her, thing, I would have been fine with that, just to have the backup, just to have the know that if something went wrong. But they were like, no need. This is, I've had individuals that do nothing but capital cases, 100%. That's all they do every single day of their lives, say that this is the strongest case that they've ever worked upon. They've never seen a case with this much evidence.
Kathy, with a C, Mabbutt, M-A-B-B-U-T-T.
And I'm going to ask you, how long have you been doing this for?
I've been doing it for 16 years, and I just got reelected for another 4.
So what is it that, or I guess, when did you get the call on Sunday?
I got the call just a few minutes after noon that there were 4 homicides, but I didn't go to the scene because of law enforcement doing their investigation first. So I didn't actually go to the scene until about 5 or 5:30.
Can you walk us through, like, for our viewers, kind of the process between when police show up and then you guys getting the bodies and doing your examinations?
Sure. Well, law enforcement goes through and looks for any evidence, takes videos and pictures of everything in there, and they'll start talking with people. So I don't really need to be there for that. They can't move the bodies. I mean, the bodies have to stay as they were until the coroner gets there. So that's what my job is, to
And
look at the bodies.
As a coroner, do you guys do the autopsies and all that?
No, we some do if they're an actual medical examiner, but we have forensic pathologists and we contract with Spokane to do that.
So in your experience, what is it that you saw when you showed up?
Well, there was a lot of blood. It was a very sad scene with 4 murdered college students.
You're ruling all 4 deaths homicides?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give us a manner of death? Yeah.
I believe that the press release was that they were from a sharp object. So
stabbings.
Yeah, I will know more after the autopsies tomorrow.
And do you believe these could be like a murder-suicide or something?
No, there are 4 homicides.
4 homicides, okay. And when it comes to doing the investigation post-autopsy, that falls on you, correct?
Yes. It's my job to determine the manner and mechanism of death.
And then I know with toxicology results, there can often be, at least in Washington, a delay. So do you have any idea how long it could take, if those were relevant, to get any type of results back on that?
Well, the toxicology reports, right, they usually take 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes longer. But they might, I don't think they're going to be relevant in the actual manner or cause of death.
And do we know how long between the time of death and when police found them, approximately?
No, I don't know for sure.
Do we have like any, like, could it have been hours? Could it have been a day? Was it maybe close? Like, is there any sort of like time frame there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, gotcha.
And you said the scene was really difficult. I mean, is this something you've had to deal with before in Moscow?
Since I've been coroner, there have been at least 2 other multiple homicide scenes that I've been involved in. So.
Would you say this is probably the most gruesome?
Oh, it's hard to just single it out. It's the only one I've been to where there have been 4 people at one scene. There have been the other ones have had multiple scenes.
And was anybody else injured, like any non-deceased people?
Not that I'm aware of, but I wouldn't necessarily be notified either.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like, because the injuries could be similar, it might matter to you.
Oh,
But
right.
no. Okay.
Were the deceased all in close proximity to each other, or were they in different rooms?
I don't know that I can discuss that.
That was gonna be my next question too, so. I think, yeah.
Will we be able to get a copy of your report once it's concluded? I'm sure it'll be.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just call.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you know what the time frame for that would be?
It just depends on how relevant the toxicology report is, but
Oh, okay. Okay,
So-
so it would like the 4 to 6 weeks. Then.
it could
Okay.
be. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
Officers discovered Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan dead inside the residence on the 2nd and 3rd floors of the home, suffering from stab wounds.
It was a pretty large knife, so it's really hard to call them puncture wounds. And they were definitely stabbings. And I mean, it has to be somebody that's pretty angry in order to stab 4 people to death.
Do you know were any messages left behind in the house, like almost symbols from the killer? Because sometimes in other cases, you know, if it was like a fetish killing, they would leave something on the body or write something on the wall. Is there anything like that?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
Part of our theme going in was that, you know, you need to, there needs to be some accountability within the investigation about having really one voice.
And he really didn't hold back when it came to talking about the coroner in this case, Kathy Mabbitt. Because according to Steve Gonsalves, as I mentioned, Mabbitt revealed to him gruesome details of the killing. She herself has spoken to the media, talking about the toxicology reports, the extreme nature of the case, the possible murder weapon. Well, Mr. Gray was very critical of her comments and whether or not she had a conflict of interest.
Well, I mean, I have issues with the coroner. Number one, you know, expressing all of her opinions over the media at, I think, at inappropriate times, number one. Number two, you know, making a personal phone call and describing graphic details of what she discovered and what she to the family, I don't think was beneficial in any way. I don't think she did it out of a place of spite. I think she did it because she was, you know, trying to give them more details. But once you hear certain details, it's not helpful to the family and certain things. So, and I, you know, I could go on and on about the coroner. The idea that she's a criminal defense attorney at the same time that she's a coroner, I think could present a conflict down the road. And the fact that she's continuing to defend people during this investigation. And she's done it before. I mean, the fact is that there was she was involved in she was a coroner on a murder investigation in Moscow years ago, and she also was the defense counsel on the case, which blows my mind.
We believe he's talking about the James Curtis Leonard case. You can definitely check that out. But it's an important discussion that he's having about.
Seemingly outwardly crazy, but she said she noticed that he had a really weird food fetish, and she said it went beyond being vegan. He required his aunt and uncle to buy brand new pots and pans for him to eat out of because he refused to eat from anything that had meat ever cooked in it. And she said it seemed to be an OCD type of situation. She said otherwise he didn't seem that odd, but I spoke to another aunt by marriage who said that the murder suspect's father, Michael, came from a fairly big family that she said lived very close to the edge. They didn't pay a lot of attention to rules. They were a little bit wild. A couple of the uncles of the murder suspect, she said, served time in jail, but for very minor offenses like gambling or things like that. But I got this sense from both these aunts that the family was pretty odd. And the father's family originally comes from Brooklyn. They later all migrated out to Vegas. And Brian's father, Michael, is the one that was kind of estranged from the rest of his siblings. And I also heard that he could be kind of difficult with his siblings. And I'm talking now again about the murder suspect's father.
Were they surprised? I mean, these anecdotes are remarkable, but what about their affectation? Were they shocked, dismayed, upset, not surprised? Like, how do they feel about the fact that the person the entire country has been looking for ended up being their family member? Like, how surprised were they about this news that he's the suspect?
Not as surprised as you would think. The one aunt, the one that saw him a few years ago and talked about his food fetish, said she just heard about it. But she was incredibly calm. She is no longer married to the brother, so perhaps the fact that they're not specifically legally in the family anymore gives them some detachment. The other aunt, I'm the one that broke the news to her, and she was completely matter-of-fact and calm about the whole thing. They didn't want their names used, which is understandable, but no, I mean, I think if it were anyone I'd known, even if it wasn't a relative, I'd be shocked to my core. They did not seem to be that way to me.
Thank you for
details. So, Evan, what all have you been able to uncover?
Well, Nicole, we're starting to get a better picture of Brian Kohberger through online and other records, but also from someone who says that he knew Kohberger, our affiliate in Pennsylvania, speaking with a man who says that some years ago he ran with Kohberger on a regular basis. Listen to his reaction to the news that Kohberger was arrested and charged for these murders in Moscow, Idaho.
I used to go on night runs with him because I didn't want to go running at night by myself. So I would text him hey, you want to go for a run? We'd go for 6-7 mile runs at night. So when I saw who it was, I was just in complete shock. I'm still kind of shaking knowing about that.
Law enforcement do, given that he did spend time here?
Well, we have a resource here called the Regional Intelligence and Investigation Center. It's the first thing I did was I asked the director of the RIC, as we call it, to see if we had any contact with Mr. Kohberger.
A data search of more than 6 million police incident reports in Pennsylvania turned up only one record with Kohberger's name. He called police from this bike trail one night to report that his car was locked behind a park gate.
There was a response from him thanking the police and apologizing for the inconvenience.
There's a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohlberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all of the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can.
On the evening of November 12th and into the early morning hours of November 13th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. after visiting a local bar and a street food vendor. Ethan and Xana were also out in the community at Sigma Chi, and they arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Two surviving roommates who were also out in the community arrived home at approximately 1 a.m. Later, on the morning of November 13th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. The call reported an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence, and the surviving roommate's cell phone was used. During that call, the dispatcher spoke to multiple people who were on scene. Moscow police officers responded and found two victims, two on the second floor and two on the third floor of 1122 King Road. The results of autopsies indicated that the four were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin were also out the night of November 12th. Investigators confirmed Ethan and Xana were seen at the Sigma Chi fraternity house on the University of Idaho campus. Here's where things get a little shaky. Law enforcement confirms with News Nation Ethan and Xana were seen at the fraternity house around 9 p.m. They reportedly made it back home around 1:45 a.m. Investigators are still trying to piece together what happened between 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m.
Figure out who they were with, what was going on, maybe any routes or paths that they took to end up going home, those types of things. Potentially, that is critical to the investigation.
As for the two surviving roommates, they were also out on the night of November 12th in the Moscow community. They returned home by 1 a.m. The two surviving roommates did not wake up until later in the morning on November 13th. That is when they called other friends to the house because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 a.m. on November 13th, a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before Moscow police arrived at the home.
Is confused about the timeline. The police have really, let out that they know from 8 to 9, Xana and Ethan were at the Sigma Chi frat party. Then they're kind of unaware of their whereabouts until 1:45 a.m. arriving home. But then when they spoke to you, they seemed to indicate, no, we know that from 9 until 1:45 they were at the Sigma Chi frat party. Do you think this is like sort of nuanced words or syntax, or what do you make of this, unusual reporting? Because we can't get them to straighten it out.
Sure. I think it's sort of an evolving timeline that police are sort of narrowing in. And in that case, I spoke with Idaho State Police spokesperson Aaron Snell in an interview last Tuesday, also with a Moscow police captain. And they clarified for me that indeed they do mean now that between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1:45 that Xana and Ethan were at that party over the entire duration. The thing they're still looking for is any information from fraternity members or anybody who else also attended that party. That's sort of what they mean when they're still seeking information about their whereabouts during that timeline.
Wow. Because they even came out later and said, we are looking for the gap in the timeline, where they traveled, etc. So I really wish they'd be a little less clear than mud on these very complicated issues that the public could be helpful with.
On the night of November 12th, 2022, Ethan and Xana went to a party at Ethan's fraternity, Theta Chi. One of Xana's roommates, Bethany Funk, was at Theta Chi that night as well. But by 1:45 a.m. on the morning of November 13th, all 5 roommates, including the 5th, a young woman named Dylan Mortensen, were home in the house on 1122 King Road, along with Xana's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin.
So in 2022, we had 7 days from November 13th to get AT&T timing advance records for anyone's phone. We did do search warrants for other people's phones. We did a tower dump, and we did a search warrant for 3 individuals. Those were all done on November 16th within that 7-day period.
Yeah, Robin, good morning. Authorities tell me the other 2 roommates who survived were also likely asleep, but that they were in the basement. And when they woke up, they thought a roommate had passed out, initially calling friends over, who discovered a much more sinister scene.
This morning, police in Moscow, Idaho, revealing for the first time that before a 911 call was made, the 2 surviving roommates of a deadly rampage that killed 4 students summoned friends to the off-campus home, telling authorities they thought someone on the 2nd floor had, quote, passed out and was not waking up.
What I do know is that they woke up later in the morning. They recognized that something was amiss as far as they believed that the roommate wouldn't wake up. They called some friends. The friends came over. They called 911, and that's when the officers arrived.
Police say multiple people spoke with the 911 dispatcher before an officer arrived.
You have victims with multiple stab wounds. How does that translate to my roommate's passed out and won't wake up?
So I haven't seen the scene, and I'm not exactly sure what they saw in the morning. But what we believe we know is that when they woke up, they believed that the roommate was still passed out, wasn't responding, and they called some friends.
Responding to what?
I'm not sure.
Detectives do not believe anyone at the scene was involved in the crime.
Here is, directly from the affidavit, what he learned from his interviews with both Dylan and Bethany, although it appeared Bethany had slept through the commotion on floors above her 1st floor bedroom.
A bored gas station employee with a strong intuition may have just given Idaho cops a break in the case of 4 murdered students. The worker at a mobile gas station told DailyMail.com that she believes she saw the white Hyundai Elantra that police believe is connected to the fatal stabbings speeding away from the crime scene. She said she spent days poring over surveillance footage from November 13th, the night of the murders, and she saw a white sedan speeding down the street around 3:45 a.m. before turning onto a side street. Authorities have said they believe the 4 were murdered between 3 and 4 a.m. and also mentioned a white Hyundai Elantra and asked the public for any help in identifying it. It's worth noting, however, that the white Hyundai Elantra that was caught on surveillance tape is not confirmed to be the one that police are looking for at this time. A bored gas station employee with a strong intuition may have just given Idaho
as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911. You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. We don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still to try to pull all the pieces together.
Can you tell me, when you say that they might have been sleeping, were they found in beds?
Yes.
And so, can you tell me if there were multiple stab wounds per victim, or were these sort of, individual lethal stab wounds that may have been less in number but more in lethality?
There were multiple stab wounds, yes, on them. So, and
were there? Go ahead.
And most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Case pure speculation.
Partly fueled by a lack of information from the police.
Everybody has an opinion and they want to come out and say it. And so what that does is that detracts from the public's ability to trust the information that's out there.
New documents that just dropped tonight show Idaho prosecutors have some more heavy ammo against him in his quadruple murder case. We have been kept from these details for 2.5 years. That pesky gag order has seen to it. But little by little, morsels of information are dropping in the way of pretrial court documents, and tonight, a bombshell. We already knew that Koberger's Amazon history showed that he bought a K-bar knife, according to the prosecutors, and a K-bar sheath and a sharpener months before the murders. And we also learned that he searched for what the prosecutors call a replacement knife and sheath after the murders. Convenient. Today, we learned that whoever's fingers were doing the walking on that Amazon account looked for ways to delete that shopping history right after the murders. Bad fact. Prosecution documents also show that the K-bar knife and sheath were, quote, shipped to Brian Koberger at his family address in Pennsylvania, end quote. The documents continue with, quote, after the homicides. Activity from the same account showed the user navigated pages related to the deletion of account activity, and a week later viewed pages associated with K-bar knife and sheath. This evidence establishes significant connection between defendant and K-bar knife and sheath.
TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter is tracing those steps tonight.
Just hours after police say 4 college students were brutally stabbed inside this home in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, the alleged killer returned to the scene. Brian Koberger's cell phone allegedly shows him here at 9:12 a.m. and staying for about 10 minutes.
Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning.
I'd like to give a quick update to the community. Starting Friday morning, we are going to be bringing in a professional cleaning crew to go to the residents and begin cleaning. Part of the reason we're doing that is because of the biohazards as well as chemicals that were used during the investigation. So there will be activity over at that residence on King Road, and we just want people to know about that. I'd like to update everybody on the amount of tips that we've received. Number one, because we've received a lot more tips here recently and we're continuing to investigate those and follow up on those. We've received over 19,650 tips. Email-wise, 9,025 of those have come in. Phone-wise, 4,575, and we've received over 6,050 digital tips. We want to thank the community for all their help and thank everybody across the nation for the help that they've given us.
You talk about what happens next. What is the next step in this process? Because this is really only the beginning.
Well, obviously, thank you for having me. But obviously, the next step is his formal indictment and initial appearance. Again, I'm also assuming that this is a man. But I think, too, the thing that's fascinating to me is I am interested in understanding how long this person was on law enforcement's radar, only because in recent interviews that we saw with the Moscow chief, he kind of kept alluding to almost punting things to the prosecution. If the prosecution will let me, if the prosecution will let me. And I found that to be extremely telling, especially being a former FBI agent. There were so many times we would go on things, bank robberies, things of that nature, where you basically would catch the person red-handed, and the prosecution still wanted more information because they want to be sure that they are getting a conviction, and that's a good thing. And so I'd be interested to know how long this person had been on law enforcement's radar for.
And, we're going to be getting this update from police. We can see on the screen there, 4 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be coming on 1 p.m. local time. And Tracy, talk about what we will learn. What all will investigators reveal? Because there's so many times we receive updates from investigators, from authorities, and a lot of times they don't tell much, but there are reasons for that.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Obviously, they're not going to most likely go into the methods that they use, sources and methods, right, to capture this person, because that tips their hand to the defense and could perhaps, break open their entire case. And they don't want to do that to the public right now. They've been obviously very close to the vest in the things that they have released and not released, and very purposeful in that. I think that you are going to get the name of this suspect. That would be my best guess. This is not a minor. This is a 25-year-old. So you will most likely get the name. And then from that, they may tell you whether or not this was a person that was known to the victims or not known to the victims, or it may be obvious, whatever their name is. And that may be it. You may get some information perhaps on the role that white Hyundai Elantra played. I would suspect that could have been what broke this case. Also, perhaps cell phone data as well. I mean, the reality is criminals are imperfect. Everyone's imperfect and they do mess up. But I don't think you are going to perhaps get a motive right away, because those are all things that they're going to use in court unless this person confesses immediately and takes a plea.
All right, Tracy Walder, we thank you so much for your time.
I couldn't verify that right now anyway. That's part of that sealed piece, but there's still items coming in from the lab.
From the murder scene?
Correct.
Okay, so the evidence we saw being gathered yesterday, that could take just as long.
That will be new information that we've collected, and we'll be processing that as well.
I asked you during the press conference yesterday about the house cleaning. I mean, you had said in your announcement that the house is going to be cleaned and turned back over to the management company. We watched those trucks come in, and then they pulled out of there real fast. Yeah. What happened?
Like we said, we got a phone call that it was through the court that we needed to stop and give a little bit more time, so we did that. So,
why was the decision made to release the house?
Well, at that point in time, we were ready to start that process. And then the court, like I said, someone from the court asked us to stop that process, so we did. And we'll continue to do as we're asked there, and we'll start the cleanup as soon as we can again.
Why would the court want that process stopped? Or
You know, it could be many reasons. Could be for the defense counsel. It could be that they just want to hold it for a little bit. But it was a decision from the court.
so it will remain under guard. Should we refer to it as an active crime scene?
It's still our crime scene at this point, so yeah, it'll still be under security.
Is that they woke up later in the morning, they recognized that something was amiss as far as they believed that the roommate wouldn't wake up. They called some friends, the friends came over, they called 911, and that's when the officers arrived.
Police say multiple people spoke with the 911 dispatcher before an officer arrived.
You have victims with multiple stab wounds. How does that translate to my roommate's passed out and won't wake up?
So I haven't seen the scene, and I'm not exactly sure what they saw in the morning. But what we believe we know is that when they woke up, they believed that the roommate was still passed out, wasn't responding, and they called some friends.
Responding to what?
I'm not sure.
Detectives do not believe anyone at the scene was involved in the crime.
And I know some of the investigators' vehicles and police vehicles are coming in and out of the driveway. Do you think that potentially could disturb any tire marks or other evidence?
Yeah, so the question has been asked about why did the crime scene tape expand, and that's not uncommon. When the first officers arrived, they tried to cordon off what they thought was important. We immediately expanded that when the investigators got there to process the scene. And logically, as this progresses, and you've seen this through our press releases, we have expanded it to several areas of the city and have in fact canvassed entire neighborhoods. So we try very, very hard to uncover every single bit of evidence possible in an area before we move on to the next area. So yes, we've looked at everything that we think we need to look at in and around the crime scene at this point.
that's what it was, though. I will be honest with you. I think it's closer than that. I think it's deeper than that. I think I think they have information that they're not giving us, and it's real fishy. That's what I will say.
When you say you think it goes deeper than that, what do you mean?
I mean, I think it was somebody closer than a stalker, and I don't know who. I'm not gonna specify anything like that. I'm just going to say I think that it was somebody, you know, and I think possibly they may have trusted. That's the only thing I can think of, because how could something like this happen so quickly, so quietly, so without any answer, unless it was somebody super close to them. You know what I mean?
Do you think the person who did this had been in that house before?
I think they knew them. I think they may have even been friends with them. I think it had to have been somebody close to them to have been able to get away with it like this, without, you know, it just doesn't make sense. None of this makes any sense. It had to have been somebody they trusted that was, you know what I mean? I mean, somebody who knew the house well, somebody who knew them well.
It seemed like something more devious to the FBI. Unknown to either the father or the son, the Bureau had been determined to keep a watchful eye on that white Hyundai's trek across America. Only sources in law enforcement would confide with a bristle of embarrassment not long after the car had pulled out of its space in the graduate housing parking lot fronting 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman, Washington. They lost it. For several alarming hours or more, the authorities are keeping the precise details of the screw-up very close to the vest for reasons you could understand. The chief suspect in a quadruple homicide that had shocked the nation had seemingly vanished. The Bureau's watchers called it a hat box operation, and the jargon was a throwback to an era when G-men sporting fedoras would be out in force on the street to monitor a target's every move. A sea of hats would box the suspect in. These days, the watchers have a few more tricks at their disposal: undercover vehicles, surveillance vans, low-flying fixed-wing planes, and that's just for starters. But the name has stuck. And the surveillance on Brian Kohlberger, according to published reports and interviews with officials, was hatbox all the way. But as Kohlberger headed across the country, in the very car they believed had been captured in the blurry surveillance footage, his father mystifyingly at his side, they had lost him even before the hatbox op could get underway. A mood of panic rapidly escalated into one of despair. Frantically, they began to search the records of automated license plate readers, or ALPRs, in nearby states. It was an exercise in futility. Nothing. Not a single hit. Then they got lucky. U.S. Route 6 passes straight through the small town of Loma, Colorado. And 8 years ago, the Colorado Department of Transportation thought it was high time to install Loma's first traffic light. It went up in 2015 at the bustling, things being relative, of course, intersection of Route 6 and Highway 139. It wasn't long after that when the engineers decided they might as well affix an ALPR to the light pole. And on December 13th, it caught Washington State Plate CFB 8708, the white 2015 Elantra, registered to Brian Kohlberger.
How's it going, guys? Casey, I'm just gonna loop around up here. Hey there. Hey ladies, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
We're not actually. I don't know. No, I don't.
Here for noise complaint. Yeah, they did.
Get on the damn door.
Hey, who's the owner or who lives here?
I can go get them real quick.
Okay, thank you, please.
This is what the other group had that ran away.
Oh, really?
They just ditched it. Awesome. Yeah, those ones kept walking in the car, and the other one wrapped back corner. Hey, property. Check that back. There's a lot of fucking alcohol in there. Moscow, if I said what? I don't know what sorority lives here. We got an 1122. Yeah. That's hilarious. Like, Tuesday, I was at the top. Blend into the darkness. Yeah.
Hello. What's your name?
Xana.
Xana, do you live here?
Yes.
Okay, did Megan talk to you earlier?
No.
Okay, does Megan live here?
Megan, I do not have a Megan that lives
Megan Mogan?
Maddie Mogan, yes.
Madison Mogan, yeah. Madison Mogan? Okay, she does.
Well, Whitney, at this hour, this crime scene still remains active, and it's Idaho State Police.
So heartbreaking what these families are going through. I had the chance to sit down with the Gonzalez family in Kaylee's home. Their loss, it is so heavy, and they have been vocal about their relentless search for justice and frustrations with the investigation. Here's part one of our conversation.
You know, she was hurt so bad that she was not able to recover. That is just terrible.
Oh, it's okay.
It's terrible. I cannot fathom in my head what kind of person did this.
It's capable.
And why. I can't sleep at night. I lay in bed pondering just millions of different scenarios. And just, I want to know, but then there's stuff obviously you don't want to know. You know, but
you just cry.
I think I want to know it all, and
you're okay.
I just don't understand why. How somebody can take somebody, four of them. It wasn't just my girl. Just so savagely.
Is anyone acting differently since the murders? I mean, is there anyone that you have a weird feeling about that the girls knew or that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say not in the immediate circle by any means, but a few of the names that have been circulating around, I think it's hard not to kind of dig into this, and I don't know how much of that is just because we have so little information from law enforcement and how much of it really is, a sister or a father's intuition.
Can you elaborate at all? I don't know. You don't have to give a name, but I mean, is it someone that she knew, or?
I have something to say about that. I just feel like there's been a couple individuals that were cleared very fast. That may not, maybe he shouldn't have been. And yeah.
She had the strong alibi.
Just really fast.
If you can dismiss.
An hour later, and we're like, what? And I don't know. I don't know anything about those individuals. I just know they were people that, definitely should have been looked at, and yeah.
I don't know what would prevent you from sharing somebody's alibi.
Yeah, I think that's what we're struggling with. So it's like,
She had the strong alibi.
Just really fast.
If you can dismiss.
An hour later, and we're like, what? And I don't know. I don't know anything about those individuals. I just know they were people that, definitely should have been looked at, and yeah.
I don't know what would prevent you from sharing somebody's alibi.
Were all found in a house just steps away from the University of Idaho campus. That was around noon on Sunday. Police have been keeping a lot of that information close, as we said, regarding this investigation. At a press conference just yesterday, the Moscow police chief laid out what they are willing to share with the public. Well, police confirmed all 4 students killed by a knife. However, they have not recovered that weapon. They also confirmed the victims were the only ones in the house when the bodies were found. 2 other roommates, though, were home at the time. Police say they were not hurt. They also believe there was no forced entry into the home. They gave more details about the scene just yesterday.
We're not 100% sure if the door was unlocked, but there was no damage to anything, and the door was still open when we got there.
Do you know inside the house whether the victims' doors were locked into their individual rooms?
I don't know that.
Officers, meanwhile, proceeded with haste to the second floor. They opened the bedroom door to find 2 dead bodies, a male and a female. The pair was gruesomely drenched in blood, yet both had their good-looking faces oddly preserved, like masks. Even at that probing moment, it was difficult, one of the young officers would later nearly wail, to look at the 20-year-old pair. They were Ethan and Xana. Across the narrow hallway was one final door. The officers pulled it open, and at last, they discovered a sign of life, a fluffy caramel-colored dog. It was Murphy, Kaylee's frisky Labradoodle. He was unharmed, not marred by even a speck of blood. A small consolation, and barely one at that, for all they had seen and were only beginning to process. When the 911 call came in, Gunderson had a corporal and 2 other officers on duty to assist with patrol. He could have left the response to them. He certainly, he'd tell people with a hint of embarrassment, had no intimation of something out of the ordinary. That morning, he was simply eager to break the monotony. And as always, he felt strongly it was important for him to get out on the street where people could see him. He swiftly decided he'd go to the scene too, with his officers. It was a quick trip. The roads leading into the university neighborhood that Sunday were as empty as the classrooms. And as soon as Gunderson's black and white cruiser pulled up behind the neat row of cars parked in the driveway of the austere, cantilevered house on King Road, he immediately knew something was very wrong. It was the noise. There wasn't any. Just an eerie, unnatural silence. A cluster of young people were wandering about, not merely subdued, they seemed stunned, as if drained by a deep and intense shock. When the 3 mystified officers approached the front door, someone in the crowd, it would later be shared, muttered a single plaintive word: dead. Still, Gunderson would confess to others he was unprepared for the strong smell of blood that rose up in his nostrils the moment he walked inside. The coroner.
11:55 a.m. 42 seconds, November 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something's happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates is passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Sorry,
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, Bethany, we gotta go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you. What's wrong?
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here's one.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Please talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello?
Okay. I have already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again? There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. I think yes. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, you have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
11:59 a.m. 49 seconds, November 13, 2022.